Ben Lawrence, Mayor.
I thought it was just right here.
Clark C.R. Nelson, council member.
Greg Schneider, council member.
Mike Warrington, council member.
Mike Keller, police chief.
Donna Davis, Chief Financial Officer.
Chad Russell, fire chief.
Jennifer McCausland, Assistant City Administrator.
JT Klaus, city attorney.
Steve Anderson, city engineer, in for Les Mangus, who's on vacation.
Susan Renner, City Clerk.
Mark Detter, city administrator.
Item 3 is Pastor Smith here this evening, Chief? I don't believe I see him. Okay. We'll skip the invocation and move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all stand with us, please. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll move on to item number 5, which is the public forum. Is there anyone here that would like to address the council? It's your chance to speak. All right, we will close the public forum and move on to acceptance of the agenda. We'll have to add that after the agenda gets modified.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move to accept the agenda as presented with the additional items. One, to go in right after the acceptance of this agenda would be a swearing in of an officer. And then I would like to add 2 executive sessions at the conclusion of item number 13. One for acquisition of real property and one for attorney-client privilege discussion issues.
Second.
I have a motion by CR and a second by Brian to modify the agenda as suggested with adding the swearing in of a new officer following this acceptance of the agenda. I believe I heard you say an executive session for land acquisition immediately following 12, and then another executive session for attorney-client privilege immediately following 13.
Correct.
Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Well, I would like to introduce you all to Andover's newest police officers, Mr. James Wilkinson. I believe I see him sitting back in their attendance, and if you'll join me at the podium here, we'd like to get you officially sworn in.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to tell you, council, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Officer Wilkinson. He joined our department yesterday on Monday. He grew up in the El Dorado area. He is an Eagle Scout, a former paratrooper, having served 3.5 years in the U.S. Army, has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Wichita State, and he's scheduled to attend the 14-week academy at KLATC on July 29th.
Impressive credentials.
Oh, thanks, sir.
All right, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, James Nathan Wilkinson,
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
do solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Kansas,
the Constitution of the State of Kansas,
and ordinances of the City of Andover,
and ordinances of the City of Andover,
faithfully discharge the duties
faithfully discharge the duties
of the City of Andover, so help me God.
of the cities of Andover, so help me God.
Welcome.
Thanks, sir.
Congratulations.
Also should mention his parents, Joe and Bill Wilkinson, are also here in attendance.
Welcome to the fold. I know you'll do well based on that list of credentials. All right, we will move on to item number 7, which is the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the consent agenda items 7.1 through 7.9 inclusive as presented.
Second.
All right, a motion by CR, second by Mike to approve the consent agenda as presented. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to item number 8, which is the Heritage TIF project.
I know the council has been introduced to this subject, and we've gone over it at 3 or 4 different meetings, including workshop meetings. Essentially, I'll let the city attorney explain the logistics of this and the legal requirements, but we have to have a public hearing. But just to remind everybody, this heritage development has been a part of our Yorktown Parkway project that's running between Kellogg and Central. It's going to be a 4-lane parkway that, we think is going to look very nice at the end of the project. But this development will be just to the west of that parkway, and in between Kellogg and Douglas. It's going to start with some residential development near Douglas on the north section of this property. And then we're hoping to develop a park and some commercial development, office retail space at the front of it. And what's involved here is a tax increment financing district where the property taxes generated by the property that will be developed will pay for the infrastructure, which is going to be, by the time the entire project's built out, is about $12 million. So we're trying to go through the processes that the state statutes talk about, and I'll let J.T. Klaus, our city attorney, kind of explain where we're at in the process and what's next and what we have to do tonight.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this is sort of step 2 in the project. You've previously created a redevelopment district. This would now be the public consideration of a redevelopment project plan, a plan for that district and what will be constructed there and what the monies from the increment will be used for. It does require a public hearing. I'd be delighted to answer any other questions you have.
Mr. Jones, Jerry Jones is here tonight, as well as Dr. Lease and Lance Beal and Jason Gish with MKC. I think any of them would be glad to make comments before you take comments from the public, or we could take comments from the public first and then...
Take comments from the public first. At this time, I would like to open up a public hearing on the redevelopment plan for the Heritage and the TIF project. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Not all at once, please. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. We can bring the discussion back up here for the adopting ordinance. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve an ordinance adopting the redevelopment district within the city of Andover, Kansas, and further creating redevelopment district, approving redevelopment plan for such district, and providing for financing of such district.
Second.
Are we in the right arena?
Sounded correct.
Yeah.
Seem to be somewhat doubtful with the city attorney.
I don't have any doubts. I just thought you were going to have the presentation before you adopted the ordinance, but it's fine.
Or if you don't want to,
I think we have sufficient information on it.
I think we've read it.
100% confidence.
We've seen it.
Yeah.
We've seen the numbers. We've seen the project. No objections. Motion was made by CR and a second by Greg, I think, to approve this ordinance as presented. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Nice presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
That was easy, right? Well, after 4 years working through this, we've been through it. And I'm excited to finally get you guys started here, so good luck.
We have one more issue on the annexation of Yorktown, if you're interested in that.
You can leave if you want. See you later. All right, we will move on to item number 9, which, again, we need to have another public hearing on. Is that correct, for this annexation? Okay. Why don't you describe this briefly?
Lance is prepared to talk about that. It's the second part of our
Come on up.
annexation, so...
So if you guys remember the first phase of the annexation of this general area, as you see depicted here, was approved in April of 2019. Tonight, the public hearing and consideration of the ordinance to annex Phase 2, what you see here. So it's the remaining properties that we did not annex as part of Phase 1. So Phase 1 included approximately 89 properties, 66 acres. Phase 2 is 16 properties, that's about 28 acres, mainly comprised of unplatted tracts that we couldn't include statutorily in the first annexation, or until that first annexation was completed. So as always in our annexations, we have analyzed them to make sure that they are eligible for annexation via statute. They comply with our city policy regarding annexation, conform with our comprehensive plan, are located within the US 54 corridor study, and it does conform with that plan. We've looked at historical development trends to kind of guide staff in analyzing that annexation, proximity to the rest of the city or the existing city limits, and then also proximity to municipal services and services that are already provided. So tonight, following completion of the public hearing, staff is recommending the consideration of an ordinance to officially annex those properties that are described in such ordinance. And I'll stand for any questions that you guys may have.
Okay, at this time I'll open up the public hearing regarding this annexation and ask if anyone would like to speak. You know the drill, huh?
Yeah, I know the drill.
If you could give your name and address for the record, please.
Ashley Plackey, 329 South McCandless. I'll let you off a little easy. I just need clarification on one thing. Our zoning still going to be R1, is that correct? Because your next item, number 10, on your corridor studies shows R1, but then on the comprehensive plan shows that it's a lifestyle corridor.
Lance answer, but I think it comes in at the zoning it's at, and then it would require a request and change of zoning, and the whole public hearing process would have to be gone through, and evidentiary facts and all that.
If you want to change the zoning.
Right. If somebody,
Lance, are there any of these subject properties that would be legal non-conforming to R1?
Can we put that map back up real quick? If I remember correctly, and I'd have to go back and look at the actual, and I think I have that slide in here somewhere. And I don't, but primarily there are a couple lots that have two single-family residences on one zoning lot. So there are some legal non-conforming uses that would come into the city upon annexation, and so the UDM dictates when those would become non-legal at such a time that they cease operation for longer than 6 months. But there will be some legal non-conforming use, and what Mr. Detter said about you will retain your county zoning until such time that you apply for a different zoning.
Would anyone else like to speak? This is regarding the annexation, Phase 2. Seeing none, I will close that public hearing, bring the conversation back to the bench to consideration of the ordinance.
Mr. Mayor?
Mayor, I have a question before we get to that.
Go ahead, Mike.
There's a piece of property, if you have a larger view of that, that has that very large pond in it. To the east, how come we didn't add that one in?
So I'll get it pulled up here, but while I'm pulling it up, so the large property, it's a large parcel, it's over the 20-foot or the 21-acre requirement for unilateral annexation. So they'd have to petition for annexation, or we would have to go through the county. So one of the limitations that we have in terms of unilateral annexation powers is anything that's primarily agricultural in use and over that 21 acres, we have to have landowner or county permission to annex.
Okay, but didn't we combine all these to be under a certain acreage?
So it's parcels, it's individually owned parcels, so anything that's under 21 acres, but we can't annex portions of one legally described, individually owned tract unless it's under 21 acres.
Further questions? What were you saying, Brian?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve an ordinance authorizing the city of Andover to annex property as legally described in such ordinance.
Second.
Motion by Brian, second by Mike to approve the ordinance regarding annexation, Phase 2, as presented. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 10, we have special use case SU 2019-02, more specifically referred to as 1216 East Highway 54 and 401 South McCandless Drive. Before I proceed with this hearing, I'll ask if any of the council members intend to disqualify themselves from voting on this issue because of bias or conflict of interest.
No.
All right. Has the city clerk received any protest petitions?
We have not.
All right. And have the council members all reviewed the draft minutes of the Planning Commission dated June 18th, which summarizes the hearing on this case?
Yes.
All right. I'll ask Mr. Anderson here to provide a brief background report on the case and recommendation of the Planning Commission.
I think Lance has
Lance.
this as well.
Come on up.
So the applicant for this special use request currently operates a child care center further east, just directly or just outside of the city limits along US Highway 54. They've outgrown that current facility, this property. They're in the process of purchasing both of these lots. One has an existing structure, which is the former Minnehaha Township building. It'll allow them, they currently serve, I think, 45 families from the city of Andover. This will allow them to expand up to 85. Following a public hearing at the Planning Commission meeting on June 18th, the Planning Commission did unanimously recommend approval of the special use application with 3 conditions. As you guys can see from the map that's in front of you, it is located within the US 54-400 corridor. So staff thinks that it is important that we have conditions on that approval to ensure its compliance with that US 54-400 corridor study as much as possible. So if you look in the memo that was provided to you guys, those 3 conditions were requiring them to comply with the setbacks, building setbacks for any new buildings or any additions to the building to not interfere with that future right-of-way. Screening and buffering from the adjacent residential uses, which will be taken care of during the site plan review process, as this project will be applicable to those standards. And then lastly, the increases in traffic, staff also believes that the condition to pave through their entrance of what is currently a gravel road is also recommended. Those were the conditions recommended by the Planning Commission as well. Any questions, I will stand for.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the Planning Commission recommendation for approval of special use case SU-2019-02 and approve an ordinance allowing a child care facility in the B-5 Highway Corridor Mixed Use Business District on property located at 1216 East Highway 54, Andover, Kansas, and 401 South McCandless Drive, Andover, Kansas.
Second.
Motion by Greg, second by Brian to approve the special case SU 2019-02 as presented. Further questions?
Got one question.
Go on.
Lance, does the existing building, is it outside of the corridor of the right-of-way, future right-of-way?
No, the future right-of-way splits that existing building just about in half. So, and that's what you'll see, the application is actually for 2 zoning lots for 2 individual properties that they're purchasing. So the idea is in such time that a freeway project does come through, they'd be able to have that adjoining property to the north to construct a new building. But yeah, that right-of-way goes right through that existing building.
Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Move on to item number 11, which is the Yorktown Parkway project.
We have 3 items here under the Yorktown Parkway project, which include the acceptance of the Central Park final plat, which is primarily being accommodating the new road, and then the USD 385 agreement spelling out the cost related to the improvements that will occur initially on this section of Yorktown roadway, specifically drainage and grading work, along with some detention pond construction, and stipulating that the city will pay no mitigation on this project related to the wetlands over there. And then finally, we agreed to pay 50% of the cost of a study that determined what type of mitigation would be needed over there, and including an archaeology study of the Osage Indian tribes, if there were any artifacts and that type of thing. Just a lot of stuff you have to go through on the punch list for the Corps of Engineers. And then finally, we have a work ordinance authorizing us to bond any of the detention pond work. So certainly, if you have questions on this plat, I would defer to our city engineer or Lance on any of it, but essentially you're accepting those dedications for this final plat that really were done to accommodate the new roadway.
Okay, so we'll handle these one at a time then. 11.1 is the Central Park replat. We're looking for acceptance of the final plat.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to accept the replat final on the Central Park replat as approved by the Planning Commission.
Second.
Motion by CR, second by Brian to approve the final plat as presented. Further discussion?
I have one thing, if you don't mind. Obviously, you know, I've been against this road going in here for a while. Obviously, it's going forward, and I just want to, you know, keep putting this on the record as long as we heavily landscape this, it'll somewhat satisfy me.
Objecting duly noted. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is that 4 ayes?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to mention before this next item that all of these cost agreements, well, for the most part, besides the mitigation and the study and this detention pond, which we'll deal with in 11.3, the school will be presenting a petition to split up the cost 75-25 on all this. So most of this is kind of reiterating a previous agreement and a petition that will be submitted in 1 month that they'll approve and submit to the city that will authorize us to create a benefit district where the school district is going to pay for 25% of these costs as is reflected in this agreement, and we're going to pay for 75% of the cost of the road. Additionally, we'll have an authorizing resolution for the project and a work ordinance so we can go on and bond the project. We haven't determined exactly how much we're going to bond as part of the Yorktown Parkway project or use from the sales tax fund. The CFO and I will look at the end of the project and see what we think is appropriate. You know, right now I think we're in the neighborhood of a $6.5 million overall project, and we may take $3 million of that from sales tax the way it looks right now, but we'll have to review it at the end. But I just want to remind everybody that this project will be split with the school district, with the exception of what's on the agenda tonight, with the city paying 75% and the school district paying 25%. The second phase of the project, which is approximately $4 million.
From Douglas to Central.
Correct.
Okay. Why wasn't the other plat from Douglas to the park part of the one that we just looked at?
Say that again?
The right-of-way for Yorktown from Douglas to the city park? That wasn't part of their previous final plat. Is that coming through, is that going to be another
different
plat?
one. It's a different one.
The preliminary plat for that was submitted tonight, and it's in the platting process for the school property, Douglas to the Park.
Yes.
It's in process.
Okay, but we haven't seen it, right?
Yeah, not yet.
Okay, so the action before us is to approve the agreement with USD 385.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve agreement with USD 385 detailing cost split for
Prudences.
prices
that's a fancy
on
attorney
Yorktown
word there.
Parkway related to drainage, grading, and mitigations.
Second?
Motion by Brian, second by CR to approve the agreement with USD 385 as presented. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And then on this
Motion
work ordinance, this is just for the detention pond. It's kind of a specialized area of issuing debt. Again, we may just pay cash for this entire thing, but the detention pond is for the purpose of handling runoff, our portion of the runoff from
Right,
Yorktown
but you
roadway.
may not actually use
That's
this
correct.
bonding authority, but
Right.
you're asking for it.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the ordinance authorizing drainage improvements related to the Yorktown Parkway project as presented.
Second.
Motion by CR, second by Greg to approve the ordinance as presented. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I think let's go to that land acquisition executive session right now. That's okay?
Okay.
Here they applied, oh, you just need to reference the statute.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to have an executive session for a period of 15 minutes, not to exceed 15, for discussions relating to land acquisition pursuant to KSA 75-4319B6,
To include?
to include city council, city administrator, city attorney.
Sounds fine. Is there a second to that?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by CR, a second by Greg to go into executive session for a period not to exceed 15 minutes for land acquisition based on KSA statute 75-4319B-6 to include the governing body, city administrator, and the city attorney. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, council, I need a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Brian, second by CR to come out of executive session. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will move on to item 12. We have before us a real estate purchase, I believe an amendment to such.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the First Amendment to the real estate purchase agreement between the Dolores Llewellyn and the City of Andover relating to the property on East 13th Street.
Second.
Motion by CR, second by Grieve to approve the First Amendment to the real estate purchase as presented. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Got 'em-
Not that motion, the motion to come out of executive session.
Brian.
You were second?
No.
Then Brian made it, then CR seconded it.
Thank you.
All right, so we're on the 2020 budget.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as you recall, we talked about at the last meeting that this meeting is to set the budget and set the mill levy for publication. And then we'll have the actual public hearing on July 30th where the public will be allowed to come in and comment on our budget and our budget priorities. But I just want to quickly go over what we've been over for about the past 2 months with various departments coming in and administration, of course, presenting their budget. So I want to kind of summarize all that with the next few slides and talk about where we've arrived at on our mill levy. So if we go to the next, oh, do I need the clicker?
I can do it.
Oh, thank you. First of all, our personnel budget priorities are a 1.5% merit increase effective January 1st, 2020. And you can see I've got estimated figures of how much this is going to cost us in the budget. We've got a non-civilian position in the police department. When you count benefits and everything else, that's around $50,000. We're adding essentially a full-time employee for both the park department and the front desk at City Hall. You'll recall that that person splits duties between being a custodian and working as a part-time clerk for the municipal court. And now we're wanting that person to operate full-time at City Hall, essentially, handling sewer bills, obviously still doing the part-time work as a municipal court clerk, but also helping out with any other administrative tasks that are needed and backup up there.
That person is to be fully cross-trained then,
Where
mostly?
that is our plan for everybody up there, but that's our primary goal.
Who's the supervisor?
The CFO.
Okay.
And then the custodial employee would come on 40 hours also. Hire an employee to handle custodial duties for 40 hours. Also, we're looking at a step increase for 12 hourly employees and a longevity increase for 9 hourly employees. A COLA effective January 1st this year. We recall we only budgeted for a half-year COLA this year that the employees will be getting on the next paycheck. And then we have an additional 0.5% for those who reach an exceptional achievement on their evaluation. So in total, that's about $328,000 in new personnel costs. I will say that we are fortunate this year that because we had no increase last year in the health insurance, we'll see the windfall this year because we budgeted 10% last year, and now we have a pretty even number coming into our employee benefits budget. So on the next slide, we talk a little bit about our major capital outlay. And staff is proposing, or I'm proposing, a $1 million increase to look at debt for new fire station land and park land that we think will be in the neighborhood of $4 million. The CFO has budgeted for a payment that's in the neighborhood of between $400,000 and $500,000 per year for the next 20 years. Hopefully that's a little generous on that. The mill will only pay for approximately a half to maybe a third of that. We think the rest of the monies will come from park impact fees, park improvement fund, and the fire district fund as well. And of course, our bond and interest does have a $2 million carryover in it currently, due to the fact that we've done so many refundings and our special assessment collections have been, next to 100%. when we usually budget, 85 to 90% for those collections. So we've been very fortunate that we haven't had any major delinquencies. That's really due to the Assistant City Administrator and the CFO being so diligent in that task and making sure we collect on letters of credit and that we get these certified correctly with the county, which hasn't always been the easiest thing in the world. The fire department has a staff vehicle and the station roof. Of course, we have 3 vehicles in the police department. Every year, we budget $1 million for our street and overlay program that comes out of sales tax. Street ceiling is another major project we do, and that comes from our street impact fund and special highway fund. We've got $35,000 in there for the Redbud Trail restroom, which we hope to get a grant for possibly, but if we don't, we would like to have those monies budgeted from the park impact fee and park improvement fund. Of course, you'll remember that when we buried the lines on Andover Road, we said we would commit a certain amount of money from the increase in franchise fees, and we've budgeted $50,000 in there. That doesn't take care of the whole payment, but I just don't want to forget that we said we would do that with those monies. We also are looking to, redo the current splash pad at 13th Street Park. We think $40,000 will cover that. We're looking at a wastewater plant study of $160,000, and of course, trenchless sewer line replacement we do almost every year for about $100K. On the next slide, I just want to remind everybody, because it's something that I don't think we quite ever realize how much we're spending with the help of WAMPO, and in this case the KTA, but you look at all those projects for street improvements and bridge improvements, and we've got North Andover Road up there, and bike and ped stuff. We're close to $25 million we're projecting on spending on road projects over the next 5 years. And I just want to make sure that everybody knows that, we're going to be bonding some of that. Of course, our sales tax fund is going to play for a certain amount of that, and WAMPO plays a key role in most of these projects as well. But I'd just like to reiterate that as part of the budget, and we're lucky that our sales tax fund makes us fortunate, I don't want to say lucky, but fortunate that our sales tax fund makes around $2.4 million a year, so that helps a lot with these matching on these projects. And then do we have any more, or is that the last slide there? Oh, yeah, I did want to go over this. So I know there's always a question about how the tax lid of the state affects us when we're looking at a mill increase and, we've got new valuation coming on. I like to think of this as the way you're starting your budget and what the state decided to give you right off the top, to say you get a certain amount of money due to certain things that we're not going to count against you as a tax lid. So new growth doesn't count against you, and that's going to be about $3 million in new valuation, $130,000 in new property tax. At 1.5%, that should be CPI. I keep putting CIP in there. That's the Consumer Price Index. That's my fault. But you get inflation factored into how much you can take more in property tax revenue. We finally had our ship come in on the NRP we did 5 years ago, where we rebated 100% of what the property taxes were on every property in Andover. Those are starting to come back on the tax roll at about $70,000 new dollars in property taxes, $1.6 million in valuation. We also had a IRB come off for Vornado, which is going to bring us about $20,000 more dollars. That's $550,000 in new assessed valuation. And remember, our PBCs that were done prior to the tax lid count as an exemption as well. So that's going to be a $258,000 payment on the police department next year. Any increase in the debt service, and that will be for the park and the fire district land, doesn't count against you. And also, our police and fire fighting operations are exempt from the tax lid, and that's an estimated about $115,000. So all to say that is we actually have 1.4 mills we could go up without having a vote. And while I don't expect anybody to agree with that proposition, I do want to say that we have another position we would like to help with the police department with, a non-civilian position. If I could do another 1%, I'd like to do that for the employees as well. And the fire department still needs a new tender truck. So we would always have more to propose. I understand that 1 mil is what you guys have talked about with us on the land, and we hadn't considered this other stuff. But I just wanted to mention that we could always use whatever that we could get under the state tax lid.
You're advocating for 1.4?
That would mean I was advocating for 2.4 if we went all the way up against it. And yes, I think it's needed, and my only evidence here would be, I'm not going to just tell you how I feel about this, is right now we're proposing 42. The only city that we're higher on our mill levy in the area is Wichita. And of course, they have 20 times the valuation we do and just way more resources. So when you look at what we are next to these Sedgwick County cities, I mean, we're 20 mills below Bel Air, 5 mills, 6 mills below Derby, 9 mills below Goddard, 24 mills below Hayesville, and 20 mills below Park City, and about 13 below Valley Center. But not only that, we're far below everybody else in Butler County. And I know some of these are...
I just want to make sure that your proposed motion for us to consider is 41.924.
That's correct. I'm just...
Raise that up to 42?
Our 42 point... Well, maybe 43.3. So it might be worth some discussion. I understand we have high property taxes in the city, and the city has been diligent, as you can see, trying to keep our mill levy below everybody else. We have a good valuation. I would throw in there that Derby has a higher valuation than us, but yet still a higher mill levy.
Can
So,
I ask you one more question?
sure.
Does the 41.924 include, in theory, the 1 point increase for the public park proposed acquisition?
Absolutely.
So the 41.924 includes that number?
Right. That's correct.
And I hear all the other wish list things
Yeah,
that you're
yeah. Just
now
thought I would throw that out there and show you the mill levy. So, but what's in your motion is exactly what you said for the 1 mill increase for the parkland.
Mark, you look at this on valuation of property. 1 mill equals
$60,000 approximately.
Okay. So you're looking at, so someone has a $160,000 home.
You're probably talking about a $17 property tax increase.
Yes.
Let's do this. Do we have to do, are we just setting the public hearing
We
tonight?
have to set the mill levy at the highest we want it to be
And then public?
for publish,
publicize
and then
it?
you can go down,
Then
but
we
you
have a
can't
public
go
hearing?
up. Right.
Okay. You can go down, but you can't go up. Yeah, I get it. I think this is a very adequate budget, what's presented to us. It does represent a 1 mill increase for a very specific reason, and we've already stated we're trying to acquire more park ground. I think we can accomplish everything that we've been working to accomplish in 2020 with this budget of 41.924 mills. No, and it's never going to be enough. I know that. And yes, we are the lowest municipality around us in this region, but we don't have to be like everybody else. We can be lower. Great. They should want to be like us. We shouldn't want to be like them. So I would support it the way it is. That's the way it's been presented. Chief, you want to say something? No. So it's up to y'all.
I'd be okay with the extra 2.4 that you're asking for. That helps the fire department, the land, and the future ideas that we have. Basically, you're talking about on a $160,000 home, $40 a year. It's not a whole lot.
I guess my position on that is I support the mayor's proposal of the 41.924. We may have to raise it again next year. I just think that we need to be as conservative as we can for every year that we can. And there's no Cadillacs involved. We've got some lousy Chevrolets that we'd like to replace. We've got some other things, but I think that we can function very well. And I have a lot of confidence in Mark and his staff on the judicious use of these tax funds. And if we're way out of line, we'll have to do some heavy-duty thinking. But I would support the proposal at the 41.924 mills. I guess in that proposal, I would move to approve a notice setting public hearing for the 2020 City of Andover budget for Tuesday, July 30 at 7 p.m. in the Andover City Hall, and publishing the mill levy at 41.924 mills.
Second.
Motion by CR, second by Brian to set the public hearing for July 30th and publish in the mill at 41.924. Further discussion.
I guess I would like to hear from Brian and Greg to see what they think of this mill levy, where it's going to be or not going to be or whatever, just besides the two of us talking about it.
I agree with Clark. I think that we need to be conservative right now because we can always look at it next year. But I think that's a lot to throw at once. I know we need a lot. We're always going to need a lot, like the mayor said. So I think we should just leave it as the presentation.
I'm on the side of conservative too.
I think it's fair. I think it's what we need. It's not what we want.
I agree with all that,
Yeah.
but I also agree with what Mark is
No,
saying.
I do too.
Understand.
I just think that we need to be real conservative right now. Just work with what we
You
got.
can't blame a guy for asking.
No, not at all. Can't blame him at all.
I think it's sufficient. It fulfills the need. I don't think anybody's suffering. You have very generous pay increases in there for employees. We're adding positions. I mean, we're doing a lot of stuff in this budget for this mill levy. So I 100% support it. I think we're right on the money with it. But so we have a motion by CR, second by Brian. Further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Have that other, I'm sorry, we need to have one more executive session.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I would move to have an executive session for attorney-client discussions and matters related to the privilege with respect to the attorney-client relationship pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2 to include the city administrator, city council, city attorney, and assistant city administrator.
Second.
For,
All right.
for a period of 15 minutes.
All right, we have a motion by CR, second by Greg to go into executive session. For any opposed? Motion carried. All right, council, I need a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Greg, second by Brian to come out of executive session. Further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I believe we're down to member items. Brian, you want to start us off?
I don't have anything tonight.
CR.
Just a foolish comment that as difficult as this meeting was mechanically, I think it was a good one, and I really appreciate the comments that Mike has made. Points well taken. I don't know that anybody could disagree with anything that you've said, and it's nice that we could come together as a council and do things that I think are correct, and I appreciate that.
Great.
No items.
Mike?
I just wanted to ask both chiefs, how did 4th of July night go for both of you?
Funny you should ask. I actually have a report here I was planning on giving you, like we normally do every year. This year, during the 9 days, our 911 center received 17 complaints total for the entire 9 days. We actually had 5 of the 9 days where we didn't receive a single complaint. How that compares to previous years, in 17 we had 21, 15 we had 22, 13 we had 25, so it was a good number. To break them down a little bit, 11 of the 17 complaints came in during times where the fireworks were illegal to be shot, and 6 of them came in when they were legal to be shot. Of the 11 that came in during illegal times, 6 of them were on the 4th of July between 11 and 12 o'clock midnight, 11 p.m. That 1 hour, we had 6 of those 11 complaints come in. It was illegal times, but it wasn't midnight yet. Just food for thought. We didn't have a single complaint after midnight on July 4th. And as far as the officers, we know of at least 3 incidents where officers took self-initiated steps and made some changes. Only 1 person received a citation this year.
That's good.
From the fire department's perspective, I shared with you via email that the 13th Street Park was absolutely packed on July 4th, and that's a little bit unusual. Our estimates over the last couple of years have been much fewer folks. So there were a lot of people there on the 4th. I will say, I was very surprised, not just because of our past history, but the few days leading up to that, there weren't very many folks there. I was there each of the evenings before that, and there were anywhere between 6 and 20, 25 people those other days. On July 4th, it was a total guess. So please don't hold us to it or take a satellite picture and count them or anything, but we think maybe 500 people or so were down there. Everyone was very well behaved and doing a very good job of following the safety rules. We had a few incidents where some cakes were still smoldering and things, and we just said, just leave them setting and we'll take care of it. So we took care of that. As far as I know, we don't have any information about injuries from the State Fire Marshal or KMC yet. We always get that information, but it takes a little bit to come back to us. We ran 1 call. Excuse me, I didn't make the call. So I don't know the exact details, but the page was that a male in his early 20s had a firework blow up in his face and his eyes were bleeding. So I do know that it was a triaged and non-critical injury, but he was transported to the hospital. So that's the only injury that I know of, and like I said, we may come up with some others that went straight to KMC.
Anything else, Mike? That's it. All right. Staff have anything?
Just want to say that I appreciate, well, I didn't tell you that my much older sister Kathy is in the back row there. She's the only one sitting there. But I didn't tell you ahead of time because I didn't want the council president or council member Warrington making me look bad because I knew they would try to. So I appreciate
You
it.
did that all by yourself.
Susan, did you have something?
I just wanted to remind all of the people that are out there watching that the last day to register to vote in the general election this year will be October 15th. So there you have that.
Okay. Yes?
I would just like to mention, First of all, we've had a really hard time with the weather with regard to our free movies. We were so pumped to be
Yes.
offering free movies in the park this summer, and we've had to reschedule The Sandlot twice now. So we're working on the third date for that movie, but we will keep you posted. But this Saturday at 7 p.m. we'll be showing Captain America: First Avenger. Fingers crossed, at 7 p.m. And then next Saturday will be the Blues and Brews event, which will include a craft brew tasting experience for an additional $10 purchase on site. And the tickets, GA, are $25, like all of our summer concerts this year. So hope to see you out here. Gates open at 4, music starts at 5.
Perfect. All right, let's get out of here.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by CR, second by Brian. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.